These are hard times we're living in. Money's short, etc. It's difficult. Have you ever heard people talking about the magic money tree? Not? Well, as it happens, I've got one. Let me show you what it is. Extraordinary. There's a tree full of money. What an incredible thing. Yes, I bought this in 1991 from a shop in LA. And it didn't come with the money, I should add. I had to add that myself. But they provided the wire frame and the idea, and it's supposed to be a little gift you give people. You put it in a bag they provide. And then you put on, well, if it's to be an inexpensive present, you put on $1 bills everywhere. If you're really rich, you put $100 bills everywhere. But I've done a mixture of 120 and a 10. It's what I had left from my last trip to New York, I think it was. But it's extraordinary. It's just a wire frame. They provide a little apron at the bottom. And what you've got to learn to do is just to crimp fold or crinkle up the bills and then put them onto these things here, little wire things which you bend over. And there's the magic money tree. My goodness me. Well, I spent quite a lot on that, and I'm looking for things to show in my collection which aren't quite so expensive as that. So let me show one which is particularly inexpensive but very magical. It's a magic trick which I learned in the very earliest days to do with a roll of newspaper, which you roll up, put a bit of sellotape to hold it, and then you make two sorts of cuts, which is interesting. To make a tree, you go down and down and down, which I'll show you, and to make something else, you go across. I'll show you the tree first. This is what happens when you shred it. It becomes shredded like that. So this bit at the bottom, which is what you hold it, that's the trunk of the tree. And then what you've got to do is to push it and pull it. And take the middle bit out, the middle up, and pull it upwards, if I can do it. Yes, there we are. Something like that. And that makes a tree with all of it falling down. Well, I'll have a bit of a shake. It's clever, isn't it? I learned to do that in my earliest days of magic, all back in my late teens and early 20s. And it was just done with a roll of newspaper. And in the same magic book, I also discovered you could make something much more interesting, which was a ladder. This was really quite remarkable. When I was doing this, I very often leave out the tree and show the ladder. For this, you've got to do two half cuts here, and then cut across, and then gently pull it out and see if you can get a ladder to come out like this. This one here and this one here. Hold it like this. Long years since I last did this, so I'm getting quite rusty. But eventually, you get a ladder comes out. And ladder, a bit more here, and a bit more here. There's the steps to the ladder. You're getting the idea. You get steps going up like that. So, wonderful stuff, and great fun to do after all those years. And just for a bit of fun, I thought I'd go back to the tree and try something which I've never done before, making a tree look a little more realistic, because trees, of course, are green. Well, the bark is brown, but this is one I made from paper. And I'll see if this makes a more realistic looking tree. Oh yes, that's very nice. That's very nice. So that's a very nice thing to do, and I learnt that in the very earliest days of doing magic before I even got into toys. However, let's look at some other tree toys. There's things which are made from trees, which is nice. I like the idea of things that are looking natural and very obviously come from a tree. This one has been taken from a piece of wood about that diameter, long, cut and put on a lathe and turned, so they leave the bark on. That's a charming thing. They leave the edge of the bark of the top there, and when you spin it, it spins perfectly happily. Very nice idea, and to remind you where it's come from. It's not been manufactured, it's a bit of nature in which you're taking away all the extra wood you don't want to turn it into a nice handle and a nice base, a little turning base, and it's got some logo on it too, and then it's turned into a spinning top. And likewise, a very early version of the peg was possibly this one here. This is just another twig where they made a cut here to relieve the strain, and this then will bend outwards just a little bit and put on the clothesline. It'll keep your washing on the line. So it's a closed peg, a very, very early one, a very nice design. And the last of these ones is something I have started to see about 20 years ago, where you say, well, you make pencils normally of wood, which you've carved, etc., made in the factory. This one is not made in any factory. It's just got a piece of wood. All they had to do is just drill a hole in the middle and insert usually a pencil, but this one it's a little blue crayon, and then you can write with it. And it feels quite comfortable in the hand, incidentally. It's quite ergonomic. And it's a twig. Wonderful idea. Going back to manufacturing of wood, here's a nice one. It's a tree, vaguely like a Christmas tree, a kind of conifer, but it's actually a very, very clever magical puzzle, a magic trick to it. It's a puzzle where you've got to disassemble the pieces, and they're obviously little It's a fairly obviously jigsaw type things, but they won't come apart. So what you do is you look at the. I've got a little bit of information on the back here, B and a T, B for bottom and T for top. What you do is an action like that, and then when it's half done, you do an extraordinary thing, you twist it out, and that comes apart. Those bits then slide off. That's a very, very clever idea, that. And it's been very nicely done, and I like the idea of it shaped as a little miniature Christmas tree. And then getting even more sophisticated, we've got one here which is really to show one of my favourite automatons. It's got a tree here and the birds twitting away. It's got batteries in the back and a switch, and something quite extraordinary happens when I turn the switch on. Let me show you. Look at that. Isn't that magical? Isn't that beautiful? And there's one more coming out. He keeps falling backwards, so I've got to give him a little push like that, otherwise he misbehaves. But next time I'll let it go. Isn't that absolutely magical? And the birds twitching away in the tree. Now what happens? He slips back down and, oh, he's struggling to get up but he can't do it. Oh, poor little devil. Oh dear. I better turn it off, I think, this is. But what a lovely piece of design that is, to make them. It's got little magnets, obviously, and each of the pieces has got a little magnet there. You can see there's a wheel there, and there's a magnet behind the frame here. So a bit of real magnetism and real magicality coming from a toy which is sort of tree-like. And the last two items really are tree balls. This is a desert island, and it's got a girl in a beautiful Hawaiian type skirt, perhaps, and a coconut tree. And do you recognise it with the segments to it? It's always a giveaway to me. It's a thumb toy. You've got to push against a spring inside, and when you push hard, the tree flops down and the girl starts dancing, and the tree starts dancing with her, perhaps, this way and that way. Wonderful idea, that. Very, very clever and unusual and almost silly, but I think it's quite original. I've got quite a lot of these thumb toys, but this is the one of the most bizarre ones. Wonderful stuff. And there's one more which is also a desert island, and this is something I picked up about 30 years ago. I've got another version of these which I've shown previously, which have got ballpoint pens on them. This one hasn't, but it's got something most bizarre on the base of this which I couldn't get my head around. I definitely didn't fit it on myself. It came like this, with this extraordinary base which turns out to be a bath plug, a sink plug, a basin plug there. Look at that, extraordinary. So what's the idea? Well, it made me think perhaps I could put it in the bath, put it in the bath plug hole, and then start filling with water and get in the bath, and have this at the end of my bath where the plug is, and twiddle my toes and have a lounge and a wash, and imagine I'm on a desert island myself. Wouldn't it be fun? So, tree toys for all sorts of purposes.